Yeah, when we're ready. 72.2. The director's very pleased with our craft services, even though they involve eating the fingers of the dead. All right, so I read the article, and yeah, I mean, what you're claiming is there is a guy who says he's her ex-boyfriend who says, yeah, he claims that she knows how to coach that stuff and coach somebody. And she denies all that. But anyway, let's move on. I don't want to argue about that stuff so much. I want to argue, like, what do you think Kavanaugh does for the court?
Well, there have been 3 recent decisions that the court invented rights. Obamacare, abortion, and gay marriage. So those are 3 things that the Democrats couldn't get their way on. So they used the court to pass laws about those issues.
So do you think all those go away?
Well, the weird thing about it is that I started to listen to this brilliant speech by Connell. What's her name? Susan
Collins?
Susan Collins.
Which brilliant? Not yesterday's brilliant speech.
Well, anyway, I believe she says that he votes mostly the same way as Merrick Garland would, and that she'd spoken to him, and that he believes that precedence matters a great deal, and since the court already decided the abortion issue, that it was precedence, and he believes in precedence.
All right, so
he's probably not going to overturn things that the court has already ruled on.
So to sum up, I think it's probably fair to say that people who don't like abortion will try to get a case to the Supreme Court to test that, right?
I think if they're going to do that, they better wait until Justice Ginsburg retires.
Well, at some point it's going to happen, and then we'll see which way Kavanaugh goes on that.
Yeah,
okay.
But it won't. But at the very least, he prevents a liberal from being in there and finding new laws or new rights that aren't in the Constitution.
All right, so let's move.
Do you think, Lance, that the right has been galvanized by the Kavanaugh hearings?
I do, because I've talked with so many people that were disgusted that the Democrats no longer believe in due process. That really scares a lot of people. You know, the idea that you're no longer...
Who do you talk to?
The idea that you're no longer innocent until proven guilty. If a Democrat accuses you of something, they get their way. Well, so that didn't work really out scary
because Kavanaugh's on the court,
right? And only on the court because of a slender but majority of conservatives who still believe that you deserve to. That people have to prove accusations against you. They can't just level accusations against you and hope that screaming mobs will then destroy your career.
I didn't know you had a bunch of conservative friends, because often you talk about arguments you get in with liberals on Facebook.
Most of the liberals that I know have stopped speaking to me. And these are people that I've known for many years. People that were good friends have stopped speaking to me because they cannot countenance being in the presence of a conservative. Someone
so you had to make new friends?
No, I mean, as you know, the country's divided pretty evenly, so I have talked about politics with other people that are my friends, and basically people are kind of scared that if they have a son or a father or a brother, and that person runs afoul of the Democrats, they will simply say that he groped a woman, and then there will be a mob call to have his life ruined. And I think a lot of conservatives are disgusted with the behavior of the Democrats. We don't want that to be the future of our country.
Yeah,
so as a result, Republicans are now Now in the most recent polls, it's neck and neck.
So don't believe all women.
There is a statistical...
What you're saying is don't believe all women.
You know what? What you're saying is believe all women except for the women that were raped by Bill Clinton.
Now, I just said earlier, like 20 minutes ago, that Bill Clinton deserved the scrutiny he got, and probably more. And
the problem is that liberals are the ones that are the most sexually groping of women. What about the second in command? Is it Ellis? Is his name Ellison? Keith Ellison. He's going to have to resign, second in command of the DNC, because he abused women.
Okay.
You lost your guy from Minnesota, Franken. Yeah. Ted Kennedy.
Yeah. All right.
Would have to be gotten rid of. Clinton, and of course, and people that lie for Clinton, like Hillary. She lied for her husband, right, Rick?
Probably, yeah.
So you can't vote for her, right, Rick?
No, I can vote for her.
So let me get this straight. I'm supposed to believe the women that accused Bill of rape, but I'm supposed to vote for his wife who went along with him?
When all that stuff was going on, I didn't give that much of a shit about politics. So I'm not fully informed about the specifics of all the things. But
well, it's pretty simple. I'll give you the specifics. In one case,
all right, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear it because we got.
In one case, Clinton brought a woman up to his room,
and then he
raped her. In fact, he raped her so badly that she was bleeding afterwards. He bit her on the lip, and another woman came in and discovered her covered in her own blood. Another woman, he revealed his winkle to. And said that he wanted her to kiss it. And a third woman, he grabbed her breast and tried to pull her pants off. So your candidate, Hillary Clinton, was married to him and stuck by him the whole way and lied, said it was not true, and that those women should be disbelieved as whores. And by the way, he lost an $800,000 settlement to one of those women. So it actually went to court. And in court, he was forced to give $800,000 to one of those women.
All right, okay.
But you'd still vote for his wife.
Yes. But we don't have to...
So you don't really believe in all women, do you? You don't really give a flying fuck, do you?
I think
you don't care if a Democrat rapes someone, do you?
So... She defends her husband.
Oh, her loyalty is touching, Rick. I didn't know you had such familial strength there with the spousal relations. That's great.
All right, I think
the loyalty impresses you.
The woman who lies on behalf of her rapey husband.
Yes.
Overall, given everything about Hillary. Now, there's a lot you don't like about Hillary besides the fact that she covered for her husband. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot I like about Hillary beyond that.
You'd put her husband back in the White House, though.
I don't know.
He'd be lurking around, wouldn't he be?
Oh, yeah, I'm okay with that.
So it's okay if a confirmed rapist is lurking around the White House.
He's not rapey anymore.
How do you know?
Because he's an old man. Is Trump rapey anymore?
Rick, let me get this straight, because we're trying to figure out right now if you have any principles whatsoever. You just told me that you believe all women that claim sexual assault. Now it turns out you'll put a sexual assaulter back in the White House as the husband of a woman that covered for him.
Yeah. I mean, because overall, the positives about Hillary, I think, outweigh everything about Trump, who himself has been accused of...
So let me get this straight.
Sexually assaulting 19 or harassing 19 women.
So do the positives about Kavanaugh, can they outweigh the possible groping that he did when he was 17?
They could if he... But there are other things about him. But
I see. So you really didn't care about the groping, right, Rick?
Well... like I said, when I had just turned 18, I slow danced with 2 different girls in May 1978. And I was angry. I knew at just kind of my situation in general, because I wanted to have a girlfriend during my senior year. It was the last month of my senior year. I'd scuttled my chances to go to college. I'd completely fucked up because I mean, it's exaggerating to say I was having a mental breakdown because of my lack of a girlfriend, but
I'm having a mental breakdown because of your lack of a girlfriend.
But
you're making me as miserable.
Yeah.
As
but I'd screwed up my whole senior year.
I wish to God that
all right,
you had had a
now
girlfriend.
who's interrupting me? Or interrupting. And I was in my...
It's not an interruption. It's a cry for help.
All right, so I slow danced with these 2 girls. I knew they weren't sexually interested in me. But yet I held them close and I pressed a boner that I had in each case up against them. I consider that, pretty low-grade creepy sexual assault and medium-grade creepiness. And I'm sorry I did it, and I regret it. And... if you can, and I feel like, I can come back from that and still live in society without being ostracized, even though I pressed a boner up against 2 girls while I was slow dancing.
Well, then why can't Kavanaugh be in the Supreme Court?
Well, to get into the weeds of it, like he denied it.
Maybe he didn't do it.
I know. So I want to get beyond Kavanaugh.
I do too, but I just want to say one last thing, because I thought about you all week, Rick.
Okay.
And I thought, this is so funny, because the Democrats now are going back to the yearbooks of American citizens to see if they can ruin their career. And Rick's down. Rick is fine with that. Rick likes the new paradigm that from now on, because Big Brother has said...
Well, that's not how it frickin' works.
You love Big Brother. You love Big Brother because they're going to do a blatantly sick, evil Big Brother fascist
That's what your media
thing.
tells you.
No. I don't want any government going back to somebody's high school yearbook. But you're so brainwashed to loving Big Brother that you're actually willing to let them go to your high school yearbook. You even brought your high school yearbook into our show. Mm-hmm. So you are a good follower of Big Brother. If Big Brother says, we're going to look at your high school yearbook to see if you're qualified for a job at 50 or whether your life should be ruined, Rick Rosner, being a good follower of Big Brother, says, yes, here is my yearbook. You don't just say, fuck you, government. How dare you look at me when I was 17? That's none of your business. No. You're completely and utterly brainwashed. You wouldn't be Winston Smith fighting against Big Brother. You'd be the one torturing Winston Smith.
How would you feel if so you're saying that if there were nanny cam footage that surfaced of Kavanaugh actually doing what Ford said he did, you'd say that that's not pertinent because it's going back to high school?
Well, okay, what we can do is this. If you want, you and I can sit down and write a series of rules about laws that you could or couldn't break and still be eligible for the Supreme Court. For example, supposing Kavanaugh had murdered someone at 17. I think that disqualifies him.
Yeah.
What if he was a serial rapist at 17? He raped 3 women or 1 woman. Then that would give me pause.
Yeah.
If there was nanny cam footage, I'd have to know precisely what was going on that bed. I'd have to know how many beers they had, whether she was more cooperative than she let on, whether it was a joke, whether him and the other guy were just laughing about it the whole time. So in other words,
so what you're saying is it could be a thing.
It could be a thing, but it would have to be something more than what she described. And unless she could somehow prove that it was attempted rape, that Kavanaugh was an attempted rapist. Now, to me, there's a big difference between what I told you last week. I actually think if anything like that did happen, I would be willing to bet that it was just horseplay. And the reason is that I still maintain that two big football players on the football team could have raped a 15-year-old girl if they wanted to. So you can hate me out there in YouTube land, but I think if it did happen, it was just they were just having fun. It's cruel fun, sure, but I don't think they were really going to rape her. But if it could somehow be proven that Kavanaugh was an attempted rapist, yeah, I think that's a very serious consideration.
All right. So with that, let's move on.
Yeah, on the way over here, Rick, we were talking about how here in Los Angeles we're kind of in a bubble, and can you kind of give the viewers paint a picture of how the folks here on the left have challenged this Kavanaugh situation in terms of rallies, in terms of maybe...
Well, no, because that's a waste of time, because anybody who's watched the news for the last week knows everything that's been going on. It's been all Kavanaugh.
All right, let's talk about something else. Let's get out of this thing, okay? What do you want to
I got to say, though, about L.A. as a bubble. Hold on, let me say what I'm going to say, which is, like, it's, as somebody, like, I somewhat enjoy our arguments, and you know, I've been on the lookout in kind of my daily life for arguments to have, but living in LA, everybody's mostly on, I mean, almost everybody's on the same side. I was in a Sharky's a year ago, and this guy walks in and walks by this family having tacos and said, "Are you Jews?" And I stand up because I'm thinking, here it is. There's going to be some racist shit about to happen, and I'm going to get to be in this confrontation.
Nose job.
Well, but anyway, he asks that. The family ignores him. Then he turns to the cashier at Sharky's, hands her a piece of paper, and says, "This is a check for $1 million." I'm like, oh, not really racist, just completely crazy. And then, you know, he says some more shit, and then he just wanders out. He was kind of just an insane homeless man. So no confrontation.
So lastly, Lance did support the fact that there is a red wave in terms of...
All right, you want to talk about the election statistics?
Well, yeah, that's exactly what
All right, so if you're looking for the best election predictions, if you're concerned about what's going to happen in the midterms, and you want to, I think the most accurate minute-to-minute portrait of the odds of various things happening can be found at 538.com, which compiles all the polls as soon as they come out, which weights them according to their reliability, and compiles some overall probabilities. For instance, as I was leaving to come here, the 538's estimate of the probability that the Democrats take back the House was running at 74%, 74.1%, that the Democrats have almost a 3 out of 4 chance of retaking the House, and a 21.9% chance of taking back the Senate. So it looks pretty good, but not great for the House. Looks pretty terrible for the Senate. I think what's going to happen is, and you can disagree with me, the odds for the Democrats on 538, the odds for the Democrats taking back the House were as high as 83% maybe 2 weeks ago. And then the Republicans got fired up about what they perceived as the ill treatment of Kavanaugh, and which in polls leads to more people saying they're going to vote Republican, so the odds drop from 83 to 74%. I suspect that Republican enthusiasm, now that Kavanaugh has been confirmed, will drop a little bit, and that the odds that the Democrats take back the House will go up to the high 70s, maybe 78, 79, maybe even 80%. And then they'll drop back down with 2 weeks to go because elections always tighten up in the last 2 weeks. And they'll probably end up back around where they are now. The Democrats have a 3 out of 4% chance of taking back the House, which is nowhere near certain.
Not 3 out of 4%.
I mean, 3 out of 4 chance, 75% chance.
Yeah.
It's so that the odds of the Republicans holding on to the House are roughly the same as somebody flipping a penny and having it come up heads twice in a row. It's not the most likely thing, but it's not super unlikely either. Lance?
I think the Republicans will increase their majority in the Senate, and that the House, if I had to bet, they will narrowly lose the House, but it will be narrow. And I also think, because this is wishful thinking, but I think they have the best chance they've had in a long time of breaking the presidential interim term curse, election curse. In other words, most of the time the president loses the House in his first term. It usually goes against him. And this has happened almost all the time, in almost every election, except under Bush W. The Iraq War galvanized Americans, and so they supported, they gave Bush the House in his first term because Americans were united against Iraq and Afghanistan.
After 9/11?
Yeah.
Bush's approval jumped to 92%. Everybody came together.
Right. So the point is, however, I actually think that Trump's successes have been so impressive that there's an excellent chance that he'll overcome that curse of losing the House in his first semester, his first term. And I think it's because the economy is undeniable.
The economy's good.
And even the New York Times is saying it. And when you get to the point that the Democrats are just openly admitting that the economy is going well, it's pretty hard to convince the American people that even though the economy is going well, they should vote against Trump so that he will be impeached. Because for better or for worse, the economy
is a strong determinant of how people vote.
No, but they also, that's not what I was going to say.
Okay, sorry.
The economy is associated with the president. So if the economy is going well, why would they vote against the person that they believe is partly responsible or mostly responsible for the economic success?
Well, even though the economy's good, Bush's approval remains in the low 40s at about 42%.
Trump's approval.
I mean, what did I say? Bush?
Yeah.
Sorry.
But the thing is, he's going around to the. He's spending an enormous amount of time campaigning, and he campaigns very well. He rallies a lot of support wherever he goes, and there's a chance that he's going to turn things around for the Republicans because of that. He can't be counted out. You can't look at the Trump effect purely mathematically. You have to look at the enthusiasm that he brings to those rallies. Enthusiasm which Obama does not bring. Recently, Obama and Clinton had rallies where hardly anybody showed up.
How many people showed up?
There was recently an Obama rally where only 700 people showed up for a president that was in office 2 years ago, which, I mean, you know, you could Roseanne Barr could get 700 people.
Where was it and when?
I don't know where it was.
All right.
But,
So, because I can tell you, because I like math, the median number of people in attendance at post-election Trump rallies is about 10 or 11,000 people.
so you're proving my point.
Well, it's a lot of people, but it's not a huge shitload of people. Like 55,000 people went to a Beto O'Rourke rally. Now, and I don't know those are attendance numbers supplied by the Trump people themselves.
Well, Beto O'Rourke is now behind by 10 points.
According to some polls.
Well, I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that Trump has the best chance in a long time of retaining the House, but I still think the odds are that he'll narrowly lose it.
So, according to 538, well, you need to flip 23 seats to take back the House. 538 has said as many as 37 seats. Back when the odds were 83% they take back the House, they were saying that the Democrats could take back 37 seats, plus or minus 15. Now it's down to 33 or 34, possibly 35.
Oh, I mean, I didn't really pay attention to what you said, but I just want to say that part of this is happening because so many Republicans are retiring. Like Darrell Issa and who's that guy from no, not
He's
Flake.
Senate.
Flake is the Senate. Who's the guy with the funny hair, the white hair from the South? That lawyer on the Judiciary Committee?
Oh, Grassley?
No,
that's another Senate.
He's well. Anyway, a lot of Republican stars.
Oh, Leahy?
No, it's not important. A lot of Republican stars are retiring.
Well, that is often a sign of a not good sign for that party.
No, they just don't like doing it anymore.
Well, that's understandable, but it also statistically...
Trey Gowdy and Darrell Issa and probably a dozen more very popular Republicans are retiring. And if that hadn't happened, I think Trump would have retained the House, and I would bet on Trump retaining the House.
Statistically, elections in which one party has an unusually high number of retirements indicate that party's not going to do so well in the election.
Well, I agree with you.
All right, so let's move on. Hold on.
I was just going to say that there is going to be an October surprise. And who do you think it'll come from? Anybody want to guess?
It sounds like you know something we don't know.
I know
Camille.
the trouble with surprises now is they don't work anymore because it's such an avalanche of so much shit happening all the time. Like that New York Times article, with which we're going to talk about the Trump family tax fraud, hits in the middle of Kavanaugh and gets totally swamped by all the Kavanaugh stuff. Today or tomorrow, I think it may be in tomorrow's paper, but it got leaked today or something, the New York Times is coming out with a story about how global warming is going to cause cataclysm by as early as 2040. And that's kind of a surprise. But some of the effects, I guess, that weren't supposed to kick in till 2060 or 80 or the year 2100 are going to hit within, almost no more than 20 years from now. And that's going to get swamped by the rest of the news. I'm not sure surprises work anymore because we live in an avalanche of surprises.
Even if it comes from Mueller?
Maybe. I don't know. Mueller seems to be a guy who plays by the rules, and everybody is assuming that he's not going to dump any surprises in the 60 days before the election. I mean, there is a tiny Mueller story that Mueller is about to, the Justice Department, his team is about to acquire an apartment in Trump Tower that was surrendered by Manafort as part of his plea bargain. But that's a nothing little story.
Comey came with a...
Yeah, frickin' Comey. That's again something that is swamped by just the relentless frickin' flood of everything.
Well, you know, I actually think that if Mueller came up with something about Trump collusion with Russia, it would have the same effect that the dossier had, because if you guys recall, the dossier saying that Trump was watching hookers urinate came out about 3 weeks before the election, and it actually had no effect whatsoever. So what is Mueller going to come up with worse than Trump carousing with prostitutes?
I think
in
we're
Russia?
kind of agreeing here that there may not be any surprising stuff that comes out that will really do anything. Because
All right. Do we have another subject?
yeah, we just mentioned so this big New York Times article, 14,000 words, comes out that says that, and based on like a year and a half of research, that the Trump family committed hundreds of acts of fraud to cheat the government out of $500 million, $498 million in inheritance taxes. And my question to you, Lance, before we argue about whether that's legit or not, is just for the sake of argument, assume it's true, every word of the New York Times article. Do you think that matters? That the Trump family basically steals $500 million in taxes that the government is due. They were supposed to pay $550 million in inheritance taxes on $1 billion that the kids inherited from Fred Trump, and through fraud they only paid $52 million instead of $550 million, cheating the government out of $498 million that was due. Now, assuming that that's true, and we can argue about whether it's true or not in a second, but do you think making the Trump family one of the among the top 10 financial crime families in U.S. history, you think that's pertinent or not?
Well, that's like saying, if Trump beat his wife, would that matter? And if he beat her up so bad that she lost an arm, would that matter? I'd like to answer in my own way.
Okay.
I actually heard, I'm really not interested in the subject, but by sheer coincidence, I actually heard the author of the New York Times article interviewed on PBS, not PBS, NPR. And they said to him, so what's the upshot of all this? I mean, Trump goes to jail, or, you know, what's going to happen? And the guy said, well, having written this whole thing, most of it is kind of the fault of the father who's dead. And the only thing that he thinks is really going to piss off Trump, because it's obvious that that's what he really wants to do, is upset Trump, is that it'll show that Trump wasn't really a self-made man. Mm-hmm. That Trump received huge amounts of gifts and help when he needed it from his father, and that would hurt Trump's pride. My understanding, having listened to the report, was that the father set this up, and and Trump benefited from it. He set it up with accountants, and the IRS has had 40 years or 30 years to investigate it.
And it seems like the IRS maybe dropped the ball, and all this stuff is beyond the statute of limitations.
Right. That was the other thing that the guy said. Thank you for helping my argument. The author said that it was beyond the statute of limitations. So I don't really know what this gets you, Rick.
Well, the family could be subject. There's no statute of limitations on on making it on fines and penalties. Being prosecuted criminally may not be possible, but making the family square up with the IRS could be possible. And yeah, the article indicates that Donald Trump, as opposed to Fred Trump, may be no fucking art of the deal king. That he inherited a bunch of property and sold it for $177 million when it was said in the article that property was probably worth more than double that he made bad deals.
Don't you feel kind of petty and vile bringing this up at all, Rick? I mean, is this really what you're going to... Is this the hill you want to die on?
I own $498 million in taxes avoided through fraud.
See, what's funny to me is this. The Democrats being basically bankrupt as far as having ideas or anything they can point to that Trump hasn't succeeded at. Instead, they figure, we'll get this son of a bitch. Let's go after his taxes. And then they're not content that the IRS had 40 years to go over it, these taxes. Instead, they're going to do it for the IRS. They're going to say, look, we've got an American citizen here that we hate. And you had 40 years with the most elaborate techniques to persecute this man, and you didn't do it good enough. So what we Democrats are going to do is we're going to do the research for you, and we're going to come after that Trump son of a bitch, and we're going to insist that the IRS get even with us, that we can get even at Trump
Do you
by
cheat on your
using
taxes,
his taxes.
No, I bet you not, right?
No, but the point I'm trying to make is it's just vile and petty. And it's what I've come to expect from Democrats, because they fucked up every time they were president. And now when somebody comes in that's showing them how to lead, how to win overseas, and how to have a great economy, they can't stand it. So they figure they can go after the guy's taxes. Well, even though the IRS had the taxes and gave him and approved of his taxes, they aren't complaining.
Are you okay with it? The New York Times, you could argue
if it's true that Trump fucks pigs. Are you okay with that? Well, I don't know. I mean, it depends on the pig.
So are you okay with Trump defrauding the government if it's true? The Trump family.
It's a very...
you can answer that question. You said you'd answer it in your own way, but you haven't answered whether you're okay with...
Well, because the problem is the tax laws for wealthy foundations and trusts are extremely complicated.
But what they
did...
No.
Listen to me, Rick.
Mm-hmm.
The tax... I had a trust at one point. Yeah. And I can tell you it was very complicated. And a trust for a billionaire would be even more complicated. So when you say, are you okay with him doing something hinky on his taxes for this trust, with his father doing something, I don't know the degree of what has occurred.
I can give you some examples.
Yeah, but I can give you examples too. What if Trump did something that would have gotten anybody else 40 years in prison? Well, then I'd be very upset. But what if he did something, what if his father did something where you just have to pay a fine? Then I wouldn't be that upset.
Well, let me give you examples.
So I can't answer the question
let me give you a concrete
the way
example.
You ask it.
All right, so Donald Trump is in trouble with his casinos or with a bond coming due on a property, and he needs money. His dad's still alive. Trump sells his dad some property for $15.3 million. And so now Trump has the money, but doesn't have the property anymore. But he has $15.3 million to pay off the bond that's coming due. A year later, or possibly 2 years later, Trump buys back the property from his dad for $10,000. That's one of the transactions that the New York Times found
It's
fraudulent.
like money laundering.
It's gifting $15 million without paying taxes on it.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll give you another.
Let me put it to you this way: this gifting thing in families, there are limits to how much you can gift in a family.
$5.5 million per person.
Okay. Well then, fine, Rick. I mean, he should pay a fine for that if he did that.
All right. So.
But impeached and imprisoned, I don't know.
But all the article does is lay out what happened. It doesn't say we need to impeach him. I mean, you'd be in favor of an article like this on Obama if Obama engaged in a series of fraudulent financial transactions, right? I mean, any president, wouldn't you be in favor if this existed in their past and hadn't been uncovered, but was uncoverable? Wouldn't you be in favor of
I'm going to say the same thing you always say.
Okay, do it.
Whenever I find something terrible about Clinton, you always say, well, her good points outweigh the bad points.
But does that mean that the bad points shouldn't be revealed?
Well, they can be revealed, but they can't be prosecuted because there's a statute of limitations.
Nobody's saying that there isn't a statute of limitations.
All right, so Rick, let me put it to you this way. I think Trump is the best president we've had in my lifetime, and probably the best president since someone in the 19th century. I think he's better than Roosevelt, better than certainly better than Wilson or Kennedy, and I'm very impressed. I'm very excited and happy. The employment statistics came out today that say that we have the lowest unemployment since 1969. Yeah, and that blacks and Hispanics are the best employed in the history of the United States.
Our friend Erica points out that most of the fall in unemployment happened under Obama.
That's a statistical. That's a trick of statistics. There was a huge amount of unemployment because of the crash in 2009. So when people started going back to work, the numbers, the percentages were much larger. But today, because of the increase in investment, manufacturing, construction, and mining, the economy is the strongest it's ever been. Possibly ever.
Okay,
and wait a minute, wait, I'm still talking.
Go ahead.
And not only is it the strongest it's ever been, but it turns out that the blue collar jobs, those people are getting higher increases in pay than the white collar jobs. So it's actually helping the poor more than any other sector of society. Furthermore, don't interrupt me behind or in front. Furthermore, it turns out that the trade deal that he just made with Canada and Mexico did something that an American president should have done 20 years ago, and that is he has tied the wages of American workers to Mexican and Canadian workers. So businesses will no longer have an incentive to move their factories to Mexico or Canada.
That's kind of all right.
So, and even Clinton's, the guy that negotiated NAFTA for Clinton said that was a good thing.
All right. So I mean,
he actually says that this trade deal that Trump just made is actually very good for American workers.
Fine. Now let Erica rebut. Come on.
I just want to say, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Bush administration, of course, put us in a very bad recession, and the unemployment rate went up, especially among people of color. Now, when Obama became president, for the first 2 years, the unemployment rate fluctuated a little bit. It went up and it went down, but because of the Obama administration, which a lot of Republicans don't want to admit, helped the economy a great deal, also lowered the unemployment rate among people of color. And it's going to keep going down because of the Obama administration unless Trump does something really stupid. So the unemployment rate, simply put, has gone down significantly because of the Obama administration.
Or another way of putting
Trump
it,
did not come out of the woodworks and just save the day, like a lot of Republicans want to make it seem like.
another way of putting it is you have the longest period of positive job growth in history. It's more than 96 consecutive months of jobs increasing rather than jobs being lost, and most of those 96 plus months were under Obama.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go over this again. All right.
Again, Bureau of Labor
Yeah, you said that. You said that.
I just want to make sure.
I understand.
Again.
Okay, let's go over it again now. All right. I'll explain it one more time.
Go ahead.
There was a crash. Because of that, unemployment went up. Then the economy began to recover, and so unemployment began to go down under Obama. Now,
So he was president when unemployment
when it began to go down.
And
yeah.
you said
When
the
there was-
economy is a direct reflection of how the president is doing.
Yeah, let me get a point off. Let me speak. So what happened was this. Unemployment has continued to go down. Okay? It's gone down steadily since Obama. I am not arguing about that. Okay? Unemployment has gone down steadily from Obama administration through the Trump administration. No argument. But the reason that the unemployment is going down to these levels, which are the lowest in history, is because Trump's policies have affected 4 sectors. 1, mining, agriculture, and construction, and investment. Investment by wealthy people is up 90%. Agricultural jobs, mining, under the Obama administration, certain aspects of mining were completely dead. We've just increased in mining, construction, and agriculture almost 1 million jobs. And that's because of policies favored by the Trump administration. Okay? In other words, under the Obama administration, those policies were different. Okay? They were killing jobs in those 3 sectors. The jobs that are coming back now are because of the Trump policies.
All right, so let me sum up, I think, in an only slightly unfair way. There's the biggest crash since the Depression. Unemployment skyrockets. Obama and the government of the time, in 2009 on, do some stuff that reduces unemployment, that helps the economy recover. Now, you'd figure that if you stop doing stuff, eventually you'd reach a point of equilibrium where unemployment remains steady and it doesn't keep dropping. So Obama does a bunch of stuff, and then Trump comes in and he does other stuff, additional stuff that helps the unemployment slope continue to be negative. So Obama does stuff, then Trump does stuff. Together, they've reduced the shit out of unemployment.
But there's more. Under the Obama administration, unemployment continued to go down as the economy recovered from the 2009 housing crash that was created by the Democrats.
Under a Republican president.
Well, they
passed
the legislature. They passed the legislation that forced companies to give out these loans. But let me just continue.
Do
So the
people
unemployment, wait, the unemployment was going down. However, under Obama, the GNP, the growth rate, was going up and down and up and down.
As it's
And
also
the
done
last
under.
and the last 2 years, the last 2 years of the Obama GNP were poor. The lowest 2 years of his presidency were the 2 years before Trump took office. They did not reach 3. Now, there were some growth rates in his early years when we were recovering as the economy began to bounce back, and that was because it had gone so low. So he had growth rate of 5 and 4 for 2 quarters. But in the last 2 years of his presidency, the growth rate yearly, annually, never rose to 3. Now, for 3 consecutive quarters, the federal growth rate predictor, I think it's in Alabama, I don't remember what the name of this organization is, but they've been right in that they predicted it would be over 4 2 quarters in a row, and it would be over 4 this quarter as well. All of which Obama said was impossible. Obama said that we would not hit the rate of growth of 3. He said that the rate of growth of 3 was for the old times, that the new normal would be under 3. Now, you have to understand in YouTube land that the growth rate is the critical evaluator of the strength of the economy. And Trump has hit 4 3 times in a row.
2.
Through 2 quarters in a row, and is set to hit 4 a 3rd time in a row. After which, Rick Rosner has told me that his wife is going to go to a drive-in movie and watch a classic Star Wars film with me.
We never said drive-in. We just said you get to take Carol to a Star Wars movie. Drive-in is this added thing.
I just want to hear you say, objectively, thank you, Obama. You can't be so far right that you can't say that Obama didn't do something right. I mean, that's just...
I actually think that the reason that the economy grew after he took office is because the economy naturally recovers from crashes.
After Bush?
Yeah, I think the Bush crash was was exaggerated, and that if Obama hadn't done anything at all, the economy would have bounced back the way it always does.
Well, the economy bounces back because you take measures to help it bounce back.
No, I think it's we live in a capitalist country.
Let's move on
Real quick, do they count people who quit looking for work? Does that factor into the unemployment rate as well?
It does to some extent, but that's a whole separate statistic.
Are you going to say that the people under Obama had quit looking for work and therefore their unemployment statistics were skewed to make Obama look better? Did you know that the person that was judging the unemployment rate in 2016 admitted that he lied to protect Obama?
Was he a part of the Bureau of Labor Statistics?
Yeah, he was.
Interesting.
He was.
All right, let's move on.
I think it might have been in 2012, during the Romney election.
All right.
And then lastly, Rick and Lance, in terms of what you were talking about of the New York Times story, and this is just as somebody watching the show, how did the New York Times get that information? Is it public domain? Or
how did they get the financial transaction information?
And if they got it from a leak, should that frighten people?
It's not from I don't think they got it from a leak. I think
the government can get your financial records.
I didn't read the whole frickin' article, and so I don't know how they got it, but I don't think nobody was leaking.
Well, I can tell you this much: the IRS was leaking tremendously about Republican candidates. In fact,
why didn't they leak Trump's tax returns that everybody wants to get so badly?
One thing is that the guy that who was the head of the Congress under the Democrats that retired? What was his name?
Oh, fuck.
Well, anyway, he ended up getting beaten up. The guy from Nevada, the congressman from Nevada.
Oh, he didn't get beat up. Was using.
He was a senator.
Yeah, he was using an exercise machine.
Senator.
He was using an exercise machine that had cords or rubber straps, and one of the straps broke and snapped him in the eye.
Well, anyway, he actually lied about Romney's taxes. They asked him he said that Romney hadn't paid taxes for 20 years. And after Romney lost the election, the reporter said, first of all, how did you get that information? And secondly, was it true? We found out that Romney had paid his taxes for 20 years. And he said, well, I lied so that Obama would win.
Okay, all right, fine. Let's move on. So, all right, you want a break or we keep going?
We got 14 minutes.
All right, so I'm going to do a book report here. All right, so without rehashing.
Stop leaning things against the snake, okay?
All right. You've brought up uranium-1 like a dozen times, probably more. Uranium-1 is this kind of, I consider, bullshit thing that Hillary was involved in selling uranium to Russia, which has been, I don't want to argue about it, but let's say it's just for the sake of not arguing about it, it's been debunked. But you're very concerned about Hillary selling uranium to Russia. But I would think now, say just for the sake of argument that is the case, that she would be selling uranium ore to Russia. To turn uranium ore into anything that could be dangerous, you have to centrifuge it hundreds of hours. And you have to centrifuge it like 20 times. You have to refine it over and over. It takes years, basically. It's like the difference between safe uranium, which has an atomic weight of 235, and exploded uranium has an atomic weight of 238. So it's a slightly more than 1% difference in weight. So imagine a bunch of people who are either weigh 235 pounds or 238 pounds. And 99.9% of them weigh 235. And you can't weigh them individually. All you can do is stick them on a merry-go-round or a tilt-a-whirl and spin them until the people who weigh 238 are pushed farther to the outside than the people who weigh 235. That's what centrifuging does. It's separating stuff that differs by 1% in weight. So this stuff, raw uranium ore, is far, far from dangerous because it takes so much refining. So I'd think you'd be interested in stuff that's already dangerous, such as nuclear bombs. So let me read to you what the Department of Energy does. This book here with Michael Lewis, he wrote Moneyball and he wrote The Blind Side. He's an entertaining writer. And this is a short little, pretty interesting book about what happens when you have a government come in, an administration come in that's unprepared and kind of unwilling to engage in a lot of the tasks of governing. So roughly half of the Department of Energy's annual $30 billion budget is spent on maintaining and guarding our nuclear arsenal. $2 billion of that goes to hunting down weapons-grade, already refined plutonium and uranium at loose in the world so that it doesn't fall into the hands of terrorists. In 8 years alone, from 2010 to 2018, the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration collected enough material to make 160 nuclear bombs. So you'd want somebody competent in charge of that organization, the Department of Energy, right, Lance? Because they're the ones who track the really dangerous stuff, right?
Okay.
All right, so we don't have to argue about it. Rick Perry was appointed by Obama to run the Department of Energy.
Obama?
I mean, Trump to run the Department of Energy. And I'm going to say right now that Rick Perry, among Trump's various cabinet officials, has done a pretty decent job. He's learned what he's responsible for, and he's trying to do that job. But at the time he was appointed, he was the guy who there'd be very low expectation that he would do a good job, because he's the guy who wanted to get rid of the Department of Energy and didn't even know what the Department of Energy did. So wouldn't you be at least as concerned about the Department of Energy tracking down loose nuclear material as you would be about what happens to America's uranium ore?
I think that the Department of Energy was created under Jimmy Carter, and it was a response to the oil crisis that had occurred back in the 70s. We had something called an energy crisis, and it happened because all of a sudden the oil producers created an organization called OPEC that raised the price of oil dramatically, and in ways that they could blackmail the United States. So we for the first time had to think about having a Department of Energy. Now, since Carter left office, the Department of Energy has not necessarily been of great value. However, they've been put in charge of what you just said, the decommissioning of
watching
over uranium and the decommissioning of nuclear materials, and the storage of nuclear materials. So it turns out that I don't know the details of this, I'm going to say in advance, but a lot of people feel that it was a mistake for Carter to start a whole Department of Energy, because it's sort of not that useful. However, they've given it tasks that are important. So we may not need a Department of Energy, but we do need somebody to look over those nuclear materials.
Well, one thing I've found out from reading this book is that the important things that the government does many often are under the auspices of departments whose names don't necessarily match the important shit that those departments are in charge of, including the whole book is full of examples of that.
Well, what's his name? Perry is famous because he wanted to get rid of the Department of Education, the Department of Energy, and then he famously couldn't remember one of the other departments.
You want to get rid of 3 and he could only remember 2 during a presidential debate.
The Department of Commerce.
I think so.
So I think it's a laudable goal to try to streamline government.
The IRS.
No, I don't think it was the IRS.
No.
But by the way, I wanted to ask you a question. One of your Democrat candidates running for Congress.
Democratic candidates?
He is saying that he wants to provide free Medicaid, this is in California, for all, including illegal aliens. Are you in favor of that, Rick?
Does that lead to reduced overall costs?
No, it increases costs dramatically.
Why, how?
What about taxes? Oh my God.
Well, we'd have to pay for illegal aliens that come to the United States, to California. He wants them all to have free medical care. This is part of his Democrat platform. Do you like that idea, Rick?
I'd have to see more about it.
Well,
That sounds bad.
It doesn't inherently sound terrible to me. It sounds like it could.
That sounds very far left. Very, very far left. Because that means the money will come out of our taxes, right?
Right. We would have to be paying taxes at an increased rate
Did I say hell no?
to give free medical care to illegal aliens.
But don't we already? Because illegal aliens go to an emergency room and they get treated.
Well, what it would mean is that people would just pour over the border even more to get free medical care.
Well, I don't like that aspect of it.
Well, that's
And that
what
seems
you
like
have.
a potentially
Okay, so who is
A,
this?
it's not going to happen. B, that seems like an unavoidable aspect of it. So
Who's this
I mean,
person? I'm gonna write
He's
his
a
name down.
Democrat running for Congress in California.
okay,
What's his name?
I don't know.
all right. So
So just don't vote for any Democrats.
Fuck you, Lance.
there's that.
I think we
there's
could end.
definitely.
I think we should end on that note because it
Oh.
is getting late.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. Subscribe to this thing.
All right. All right. Good night.